Hi everyone, hope you like this video. If you do, please subscribe to my channel. You can also find me on Udemy, Facebook, Instagram and Skillshare. Thank you, see you soon! Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about the IELTS Writing Task 1. Okay, so the Writing Task 1 of the IELTS academic exam requires you to write a summary of at least 150 words. This summary is in response to a particular graph, which can include a bar, line or pie graph, or a table or a chart of progress, which shows how something works or how something is done. This part tests your ability to select and report the main features, to describe and compare data, identify significant trends in factual information, or describe a process. So, how can you prepare for this part of the writing paper? Now, task 1 can be quite difficult, especially if you are not well prepared for it. There are some things that all graph or chart types have in common, and other things that make them quite distinct. The type of language you will need will be different depending on the graph or chart that comes up on the day of the exam. However, the structure is one thing they all have in common. So, my tip number 1 is to know how to structure your writing for task 1. What I mean here is the structure of your writing, including what to include in each paragraph and how many paragraphs you should be including. So take a look at this slide. Here is a typical example of a writing task 1 question which you could be asked in this part of the test. As you can see, you have a table which shows information and predictions regarding the change in percentage of the population aged 65 and above in 3 countries. Okay, so in order to tick all the examiner's boxes and to answer this question correctly, I recommend that you use the following structure of paragraphing. So, your first paragraph is going to introduce the graph or the chart. Paragraph number 2 is going to give an overview. Paragraph 3 is going to describe the main features. And the final paragraph, paragraph 4, is going to be a short conclusion. Okay, so this sounds a little bit confusing right now, so let's look at this in a bit more detail. So paragraph 1, I told you, is going to introduce the graph or the chart. Now, all you need to do in these introductory lines is explain in a very general way what the visuals contain. Try to do this in one sentence if possible. Now, you're going to need to practice paraphrasing what the task represents. So a lot of practice is needed to be good at writing introductions. Okay, although all the information you need is in the question prompt, you must use your own words. I can't stress that point enough. It is pointless to use the same words that are in the question because you are not showing your capability. Okay, so don't use the same vocabulary as the prompt, as you will definitely get a lower score for this. Okay, so that is the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, you're going to give an overview. So in the first paragraph, you explained what the visuals are about, the topic, and in paragraph 2, you need to describe the main information that is contained in the visual. So the overview should state the main trend or the most noticeable piece of information from the graph or chart. Do not include details from the chart yet. Again, you should report in very general terms. In paragraph number 3, you're going to describe the main features. So it's now time to describe the graph in more detail. Now, don't attempt to describe all of the data that you can see because it would probably be impossible to do that within the time limit. So you have to make some important choices about this. Now, you need to report about data that is linked to the main features that you explained in paragraph 2. You need to state what is similar and what is different, so comparative structures might be very useful here. Now, paragraph number 4 is actually optional, so I suggest you write a short conclusion. Now, like I said, writing a conclusion in writing task 1 is actually optional, but this can be helpful to include if you're finding it difficult to reach your word count minimum of 150 words. However, a concluding sentence won't massively help your score that much, but it can be useful to tie the whole piece of writing together. Okay? So here I have a model answer for the visual that you saw earlier. As you can see, it is split into 4 paragraphs. The introduction is a short 1 sentence, and it also features a conclusion, which is 2 sentences. You can see the main part of the text is the middle. Okay, so that is the most important part. Tip number 2 is to know the IELTS Task 1 scoring categories. So what the examiners are actually looking for in your answer. I believe this is very important if you want to do well and be prepared. You need to know how your writing will be assessed. So your final score will range from 0 to 9, but the criteria for those marks will look like this. Grammatical range and accuracy, vocabulary range and accuracy, coherence and cohesion, and task achievement. Okay, so again, this is a little bit confusing, so I'm going to explain all of these different parts in more detail. So, grammatical range and accuracy. So this refers to the variety and complexity of structures you use without making a lot of grammatical errors. So, tip number 1, try not to use the same simple sentence structures over and over. The next time you write a practice response, take a close look at your sentence structures. Do you use a variety of sentence patterns? Tip number 2, use complex sentence structures. You need to show that you can write advanced sentences without mistakes. Okay, the next part is vocabulary range and accuracy. Now this refers to your ability to use a wide range of vocabulary correctly and appropriately. So that means without errors and in the proper context. So tip 1, you should try to learn 15 to 20 new words each day. I recommend that you try making vocabulary flashcards or keep a notebook that you can write in every day some new English words that you have learned. Tip number 2 is to practice paraphrasing. So, as I said earlier, you need to be able to paraphrase the language from the question prompt and the visuals. Copying chunks of language from the question and visual to your answer is definitely going to lower your score. Okay, our next category is coherence and cohesion, and this tests your ability to present ideas clearly and logically. The examiner wants to see that your ideas make sense in the order you present them and that they work in a logical way. So, tip number 1, you should use a range of transitional devices. Now, transitional devices are words that we use in English when we want to link ideas and sentences and paragraphs together smoothly. So words such as furthermore, in addition, in contrast, on the other hand, since, in spite of, these are all examples of transitional devices. Okay, the final category is task achievement, and I believe that this is the easiest to score marks on if you do it correctly. Now, task achievement refers to how well you have fulfilled the basic requirements of the task based on the instructions. So, my tip is to follow the paragraph structure which I gave you earlier, and with that, you should not go wrong. Now, tip number 3, get your timing right. One big challenge of the IELTS is the timing in the writing test. A lot of people spend too long on task 1 and don't leave enough time for task 2. Now, practice writing task 1 in 20 minutes. Do not spend more than 25 minutes. That is too long. I recommend 20 minutes for task 1 and 40 minutes for task 2. However, don't start with writing task 2, always do task 1 first. Remember, you also need to allow time for planning. Planning is very important. The more time that you spend planning, the better your answer is going to be. I recommend that you spend at least 3 minutes planning and 2 minutes checking your answer. Now, practice is the key with time management. So every time that you decide to do a practice writing task, make sure that you have your watch or a clock and you time yourself, and be very strict with yourself. Only give yourself 20 minutes for task 1 and keep practicing and trying to get yourself finished in that time frame. Okay, my tip number 4 is to know the differences between the tasks. So it's very important that you know the difference between the different types of charts and graphs. In task 1, you will be given one or more graphs, which could be a bar, column, line or pie graph, a table, a flowchart, a map or a process diagram. It's important that you are able to differentiate between these different tasks and quickly. For example, a pie chart will require you to use percentages and comparative language, whereas a process diagram will require you to use passive structures. Now, I will go through this in more detail in another video lesson. Final tip, tip number 5, learn from your mistakes and be prepared. It's important that you take this part as seriously as the other parts. You must be prepared. One way to do this is to study a variety of sample answers that you can find online. By reading these, you will become familiar with the language that is used in each chart and graph. You will also learn phrases and vocabulary which you can use in your own answers. Now, when your teacher corrects your writing, always take on board the advice you are given. Keep a record of the mistakes you make. If you find yourself making the same mistakes again and again, maybe write it down so that in the future you can avoid making that mistake. Also, always try to rewrite sentences so you can improve your writing. And finally, take into account the information I have given you, but keep in mind that you will need to work very hard to pass the exam. It is essential that you get feedback on your writing from an experienced teacher. Now, for more guidance, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and join my IELTS Facebook group. I've put the link below.